Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Velero Community Meeting / Open Discussion. Today is June 2nd is how you pronounce it. June 2nd, 2020. And yeah, we got a bunch of people here on the call. Fantastic. And I will introduce some of these lovely folks later on in this meeting. But for now, let's get through our status updates. If you have anything that you would like to add to the meeting, please do so in the meeting notes. If you want to add something to the discussion topics, please do so. I'm going to share my screen as well so you all can see what we're talking about. All right. So with that, I think, Michael, you're up first.
Yep, absolutely. Thank you, Jonas. So hello, everybody. So if you've not noticed, we actually created a Velero Governance document that describes the high-level view of how we run the community for Velero. Think of this as the charter for our project. It includes the different repositories that we have under management. It includes the community roles, starting from users to contributors to maintainers, and a path for folks that are contributing in a consistent manner to the project to kind of move along those ranks and become a maintainer. And then we also include in the governance how we do voting, how decisions are being made, if there is a potential for maintainers not to agree, how we're going to basically make decisions like that. So that document is already merged into our repo, and right now there was a discussion as part of the merge that, let me actually see if is Kieran on the call. Kieran is not on the call. Kieran had initiated a discussion saying, hey, there's a big gap between a contributor to maintainer. Is there a way we can bridge that gap? And how can we help users that are interested in contributing to Velero have a good path towards that? And I was hoping we could have a discussion on that. I'll offer my thoughts. Hopefully, Kieran and others do view this offline. And maybe that's something that, if they want to bring it up to another future community meeting, we can do that as well. My view is the following. When we have users that are heavily contributing to a project like Velero in this case, and they start becoming owners of a functional area. And what I mean by functional area is not necessarily, it doesn't have to be an area where you contribute code. It could be test and release, for example. It could be the Helm chart. Well, that's actually code. Or it could be something along the lines of security. We want to recognize those individuals, and very likely we could make them the technical leaders of that area. We didn't call it out as a specific separate community role in this case, because I don't feel like that's necessary. As individuals and contributors are kind of progressing and they become these feature leads or technical leads in a specific area, I think that sets them up very well on a path towards maintainership. And as they consistently maintain that level of contribution to the project, they'll get to maintainers in no time. So that's kind of the thinking behind it. So first, you demonstrate that technical leadership in an area or in a role, and then once you've consistently shown that over time, you become a maintainer. That's kind of our path. So we didn't have to call out a technical lead a role just yet, because we're also a small project. If anybody has any additional thoughts on the subject, feel free to bring that up now, or maybe if Kieran wants to bring it up again, we can talk about it another time.
I would just say I largely agree with you there, Michael. I don't think we're quite ready for it. I think the next logical step, like when we would be ready for it, the easy dividing line would be along repo lines, like plugin repos and the Helm chart and things like that. Like that makes a logical dividing line for me. But that doesn't mean there aren't areas within core Velero that, like, it totally makes sense that there would be specializations within core Velero too. So
Absolutely. And we're not closing the door here. You know, none of these decisions are ever final. This is a project that will continuously, is like almost like we don't necessarily have project reviews and coming back and kind of thinking about what we did in every release. I'm not going to use the word that Jonas likes because I'm not a huge fan of those. But our goal here is to continuously make minor improvements and make the project better, right? So when the time comes and it's the right discussion to have, we'll have it and we'll do the right thing. Jonas, if you don't mind, go to the maintainers, link on the maintainers really quickly. It's under supermajority. There's a link there for maintainers. So I want to point out one thing. So for example, we have, so the Helm chart area, is that linking back to the same page? Oh,
yeah, it is.
Bummer. Can you go to the,
yeah.
Sorry, I didn't know where that was linking. I thought it would take you to maintainers. So now we also have the maintainers, which are the leaders of Velero today. Now, they're all from VMware, but it doesn't have to stay that way. We want to encourage other contributors to continue getting involved in the project, and you know, when the community recognizes you, your name will be up here. And I want to point that one last thing here is that under deployment, Carlos has been taking a lot of initiatives around the home charts, and you notice that he's not the maintainer, but he's the lead for deployment. So kind of started already adopting that model that, you know, we might call someone a lead, you know, he's the technical expert for home charts and deployment and packaging for Velero, along with Carlisia, that's doing a lot of work around UX, install configuration, CLI. And when the time comes, individuals are in these areas that may not be maintainers, you know, they'll make the jump if they're if it makes sense. That's it from me. Thank you.
I do have a little bit of input on that. I sort of agree that it's a big jump from going to a contributor to a maintainer. Maybe we could have, one idea is we could have the role of an approver, which would be someone who is reviewing PRs, but they wouldn't be able to merge PRs, but they will be able to do a pass on the PRs, which would, if they catch things, I think that would be very valuable for us, the ones who are able to, the maintainers who are able to merge, to have like a sort of like a, you know, it's an editor that there's a first pass, and then we'll come and take that into account. And because I think a maintainer is they need to both be able to contribute any, whatever it is, but also do PR reviews. And that would allow us to assess that side of things too, in addition to also being a value contribution to have that first pass or an additional pass on PRs. I don't know how that would work in practice, like, because we don't use bots. I don't know how, in other words, but I would love to see people helping us review PRs. And maybe we can promote them to, like, okay, these contributors are PR reviewers. And we start building trust that they understand the code base, they understand the logic.
And you would give them like the green check mark for the review?
No.
Okay.
Because that will be just for the maintainers, but something in between that they wouldn't get the green check mark, but they know on their way there.
Yeah, so the you know, obviously some communities like Kubernetes have a very formalized way to track reviewers versus approvers, and you know that makes sense. I think in our case we could actually do this without formalizing the roles. Like, for example, and Dylan, I'm sorry, I'm going to pick on you. If Dylan sees a PR and he loves it, he can actually go and say, hey, you know, I think I approve these changes. I looked it over extensively and I agree with it. And that reduces the burden. For example, I'm going to pick on someone else here, Nolan, to come in and say, hey, you know, Dylan has been reviewing our PRs. He's been doing a great job later. He's an expert in this area. He understands this. You know, I don't need to give it, you know, I can give you the white glove treatment for this PR and just do a cursor review and merge it in because Dylan did most of the heavy lifting. We could do that. Dylan, given that Dylan doesn't have the ability to merge the PR, he's acting almost as an approver in an unofficial role. When Dylan does it on 5, 10 PRs, 100 PRs, whatever the number is, maybe that's the jumping point that we say, Dylan, he knows his stuff, he knows what he's doing. Now it's time to recognize him and give him also authority on top of basically influence.
Yeah, but I think what I'm talking about, and I think what Dylan is talking about, is making that explicit. Just, why not make a role for it? So we are making explicit. People who are reading that document understand that there is such a thing. Because otherwise, that is sort of obvious. Anybody can go in any open source project and give their inputs on PRs. But making explicit that we are looking for that is a stepping stone to be a maintainer, I think it's valuable, but maybe it's just a hassle.
I'm open to that. If someone wants to go into GitHub and update it and add the reviewer role and basically add it into the owners file, then if everybody else agrees, I don't know what team or Ashish or Steven. I don't have any concerns. If we want to do that and formalize it, I'm all for it. But I think also the key driver is the point in time that we add these reviewers is that we have 2 or 3 folks that are ready to fill that role. So if we have those 2 or 3 folks that are ready to fill that role, I'm all for it to do it. I don't want to create the role now and just have it be empty.
So my opinion is sort of in the middle. I find that it is important, like Carlisia said, that role sort of naturally happens in any sort of social system. Someone gains trust and then people listen to them more. I guess I don't have a strong opinion whether we need to make it formal at this time, like write it down in technology or not. So either way, I guess on the plus side, it shows, it gives potential maintainers more iterative steps in their path to become maintainers. So I think that's a big benefit.
Yeah, I like that too.
So why don't we do one thing? Carlisia, why don't you, you and the other maintainers come up with a couple of names for recommendations for who will be the initial set of reviewers. And once we actually have that list, then maybe that's how we go about doing it.
Okay, cool.
And actually, if anybody on this community meeting is interested in becoming a reviewer and you think that's a role that you want to have, please talk to Carlisia so she can add you to that list. Be expected that when PRs come up, our Carlisia will say, hey, reviewers, what do you think?
Yeah, we will all do that.
Yeah, I didn't mean to pick on you, Carlisia. I meant all the maintainers. But
No,
we
that's actually a good, sorry, Michael, go ahead.
No,
Yeah,
it's okay to pick on me. I just want to, like, for transparency, is like it's going to be not just me. So be prepared. No, I think if we get in a rhythm like that, as we get to know people, if there's a PR on Rastic and somebody has been very active in the area, then we'll ping down. We're not going to ping everybody with everything, like, so we can just ping down for that because we know that they've been doing work on that area, and right.
Yeah, it makes sense. That's exactly. And we also probably will create the distribution list on GitHub, so you can do add Velero reviewers, for example, and you'll be able to bring them all, tag them all. But Tim, go ahead.
I was just going to say the really big benefit is for Velero, the core maintainer team spends a pretty significant amount of their time doing reviews. And so please consider this a call for reviewers, everyone that's in the call. We would love your help. We would love to have you be more involved. It's fun, but everyone's doing a lot of cool stuff. And so it takes a lot of time to look at it, and we'd love to open the tent.
Awesome. I think we exhausted that topic for now. Thank you so much for everyone for your input there. And let's move on to the next item on the list. So we have Nolan.
Hey, so just realized my first item, I didn't put a link for it, but I added a draft PR for automating more of our release process. The last PR, or the last release we did, took us a little while. I took that over from Steve, and I saw some places where we could just like put all these steps in a script. So I worked on that some, and there's some other things I want to talk to Steve about, and put more of these steps into scripts, but this may not be exactly how we end up doing it. And I know Ashish was talking about maybe taking the output of this and putting it in all the plugin repos, so we can just do, or putting it in a separate repo that just does this for all the repos, so we can just run the same process for all of our repos, so we can release all of these things with minimal effort. So just wanted to mention that. This would hopefully make it a little bit easier for other people to do releases, versus just reading a bunch of documentation, which in my experience was, it's good to have, but was easy to miss things. The next item, I reviewed some community PRs. I specifically went into the progress on backup and restore operations by volume snapshotter plugins from Vishnu, and this is some really good stuff in there. I had some questions and requests for clarification on this. I didn't see Vishnu on the call earlier, but this looks pretty good to me. So at this point, I'm just waiting for some clarification. And then the last week, I've also been working on some internal Velero-related projects here at VMware. And I'm also on community support this week. So I think that's most of the stuff I've got going on that I could remember to put in here.
Sounds good. Any questions, comments for Nolan? All right, moving over to Ashish.
So last week I spent moving all of our plugin repos to use Go modules. We were using dep to manage dependencies before, but now they're all using Go modules. And then the other thing that I did was decommission Travis from all of our repos for both CI and release. We are now using GitHub Actions to do CI and release. So that was a good thing to take care of. Makes the process a little more in GitHub and native to GitHub. The other thing that I wanted to bring up was a blog post that I wrote for folks to use or help get started on using the CSI feature. So if you have not started using the CSI snapshotting feature yet, and you are able to use it in the environments that you operate in, please do give it a try, and please provide feedback that we will use to improve our support for CSI, and also take that feedback upstream to have that built in. So please do take a look at that. And then I also did some PR reviews like last evening and earlier this morning, and I added some feedback on the restore hook proposal and also the volume snapshot progress proposal that was out there. So that's pretty much everything that I had as status updates.
Awesome. Anyone have any questions or comments for Ashish? All right, moving over to Stephanie.
Mute. Sorry about that. Hi, everyone. So last week we talked a little bit about the upvote, downvote capability that we'd like to add into the PRs for Velero. This is in an effort, just to recap, to make more data-driven decisions about what's important to the community by putting the capability in the hands of the community to vote on which issues you feel are most important. So this week, we plan to make that feature go live and have an announcement. I'll coordinate with Jonas to get that up on Twitter and on Slack so that everyone knows it's available and how to use it. And we're really looking forward to seeing the higher level of community engagement through that capability. If you have any feedback, any questions, or anything that you feel would be valuable in that sense, please just let us know. That's it for me, Jonas.
Thank you, Stephanie. Yeah, this was fun to do last week. I got some great help from Nolan digging into some Go code here. I am not a coder of any sort, so this was super fun to dig into, to actually get the documentation out here, which needed to be coded into bug.go. All right, yep, so that's going to be super fun. We'll do that later today. And now moving on to Carlisia.
Mine's pretty short. I was on community support last week and did a catching up on PR. So I did a lot of PR reviews, and Friday was pretty much a personal day for me. And this week I'm working on addressing the reviews on the KubeBuilder new backup storage location resource built with KubeBuilder and controller runtime library. And that is also part of the discussion that I added. So yeah, we'll have to, when we get to it, we'll discuss better, but that's what I'm doing. It's it would be the beginning of involved work. That's it. Yeah, I have a lot of feedback, but they pretty much all very minor. Nothing that's
are you asking the community to review this?
I think if anything, the community could look at the issue that I added to the discussion list that's very tied up with this. And it's more like gives a higher vision of why this even is even there. So let's talk about it during the discussion. But as far as review, I think if anybody, reviews are always welcome, please. But yeah.
Sounds good. Any questions, comments for Carlisia? All right, so I'm up. I want to introduce everyone to a few wonderful folks who are on the call here today. So first up, we have Abby. Where are you? There you are. Abigail McCarthy, who will be helping us out with docs and yeah, putting some processes in place for docs and some fun stuff. We will. I've added a topic for her today in the discussion topics there. We're going to talk about the documentation style guide. So welcome, Abby, to the community call here. Then we have a bunch of other folks as well. So we have Tony Batard, who couldn't join us today. He's prepping for the CKA exam that is taken in just a few hours. So he will be doing that. We have Mike Tritterbaugh, who couldn't join either today. But we do have two other people here, Duffy Cooley, and we have Matthias Danter. So welcome, and these four lovely people will help us with a few specific things. So the first task at hand is to run a few security linters and things like that, like GoSec and stuff like that, to find potential issues in the source code of Velero. And if they find something, we'll make sure that we make issues for them and try to fix them before they become real issues. So that's the first part of this. And the second part is they will also help us upgrading the website to Jekyll 4, or potentially also making a Hugo template of the website so we can move over to Hugo if we wanted to. So thank you all for joining today. Super happy to have you. This is going to be super fun, and we'll have some updates maybe next week in the next community meeting as well. And Tony, Duffy, and Maciej and Mike will be working with Steve Chris tomorrow to make sure that they have everything they need in terms of local development environments and things like that for Velero. Any questions, comments for me? All right. Then we're going to move into the discussion topics. Michael, you already covered the Velero governance, so I don't think we need to do that again.
Yep, thank you.
Yep. So let's move over to Carlisia.
Okay, so story time. There's a lot of stuff on that ticket. I'm going to talk about the spirits behind this. It's sort of like a proposal. Right off the bat, I will say that we did have a meeting. I did publicize it on Twitter, but it was just the core members who attended the meeting yesterday, and we all want this. So, spoiler. This all started when I had to build a new controller. And I was trying to find a way to create good tests, because the tests that we have, I actually don't know a single one of the maintainers, but I know there's a few of us are very not satisfied with the way it is. It's based on actions, and we don't think it's not easy to maintain, and it's not even very solid. So then I landed on, okay, maybe if we, Jonas is laughing. Maybe if we do the things with the QBuilder way, which I wasn't even familiar. I just ran into the env test library, and that led me to QBuilder. And then I was investigating, and then I found out that Ashish had suggested that we converted our code to the QBuilder way. I'm saying this very like hand wavy. QBuilder way is sort of like a handle for this migration, which involves, there are multiple parts to it. One part is running things with QBuilder, generating things with QBuilder, and the other part is using some libraries that are offshoots of the QBuilder project, like the controller runtime, like the test libraries. So just to give an idea. And so I kept checking in with the team, and everybody says, yeah, let's try to do this. So I did convert all of the new controller was going to be, it is going to be for the backup storage location. So I converted the backup storage location resource to use the runtime controller client as opposed to the Go client. And also I had to instantiate the runtime controller manager to make that work, to hook up to the server and make all that work. And the big question for me at the time was, are we going to be able to run these two things in parallel? So it turns out that yes, that worked. That PR is the proof of concept. And so we had a meeting yesterday, and we were evaluating if we wanted to move on with this project, because that PR would only make sense to go in if we wanted to eventually convert all the other resources and controllers. So we had a meeting yesterday, and short of it is that, yes, we very much want to do this. And so I sort of like, what we would like to do is to dedicate a portion of the upcoming releases, and I volunteer to do this. I also, maybe I'm willing to share, but I also volunteer to do this work since my hands are in it already. So dedicate every release up to 2.0, and that we don't know how many we will have, but let's say 2 or 3, to spread out this work amongst these releases, because when this finally completes, it will be a breaking change, because the API that's there that we use, maybe other people are importing and using it too, and that will change. So while we do this work, we can keep both APIs, both packages side by side, so you wouldn't break anything for anyone as we convert resource per resource. And when I say resource and controller, coupling. So we will do one by one, and when 2.0 comes around, then we'll get rid of the package that we have now and use the new API package. Now that's one thing, and not so the motivation for that is it has a lot to do with how we can write beta tests, and how in the process of doing this, we would also remove, we have a lot of logic in our controllers, which also makes the tests harder to write and maintain. So yeah, we would do the work of removing the logic out of the controller. Steve actually started doing that with the backup logic. We just haven't merged it yet. This is something that we also very much want and think is necessary. So that will all be part of this work, and we consider it paying off technical debt and updating the Velero code base to look like modern code bases that run on Kubernetes. I don't know if questions? If Nolan and Ashish, if I misrepresented anything, please correct me.
I think that was pretty accurate.
So for this, carlisia, it seems like it's going to be a quite large undertaking. What are the next steps for this?
So the next, so this is yeah. So this is where it is a large undertaking. It is something that we need to plan, and the next step is to make sure that product, and that's Stephanie and Michael, understand what this is and are on board on it, with it, so we can do the work. And the next step would be to get that PR merged, and then to work on the Ashish made a great suggestion, which was to start with the smallest resource we have, resource/controller, which is the server request. And that, because the PR that I have now, it sort of gives me an idea, but I was also learning how to piece it all together. So for me to do the after that PR, or working off of that PR, do the conversion of just this one set of resource and controller, and get an estimate of how long it would take per each one. We have 10. Yeah, so we have 10 resources. I already converted the backup storage location, so that leaves 9. So I would do that, get an idea, and then plan how we would space things out. And leaving the backup and restore resources for last, because they are very involved. They are the like comparatively way more involved than the others.
Yeah, and the plan with backup and restore would be to Steve's already got a PR out for this, but it's very old and stale, so it needs to be updated. But the plan would be to pull the logic for a lot of the backup and restore work, the work inside the controller, out of the controller into their own code, so that updating the controller themselves would hopefully be less work, so that we kick the business logic of backing up or restoring out of the controller, and then we can update the controller to the controller runtime. But like Carlisia said, that those two are the most, well, it's all critical, but those are the most critical.
So the most immediate action that I would need is to know what product needs to know to be on board with this, so we can proceed with confidence.
Hey, Carlisia, maybe we can set up some time for us to all kind of talk through it a little bit further. And then I also think that, you know, from a requirements perspective, I mean, I think it sounds great and I'm very much on board with it. But I would be interested to see how it all kind of pans out once the planning for the work has been done and we kind of spread it across the backlog.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, let's try to talk soon then.
Sounds good. Does anyone have any other questions or comments for Carlisia here? All right, this is exciting. This is a big thing. Awesome, thank you, Carlisia. Next up, we have, let me share again here. So we got two things that we want to continue to discuss. The first one is Abby, and then we have Kevin, who I saw joined as well. So let's start off with Abby here.
Hello, everyone. Excuse me. So what I wanted to bring up was creating a documentation style guide that we can use throughout all of the docs to make sure that everything stays consistent, whatever. So basically, the style guide itself is just a collection of the decisions that you've made about how you want things to be documented throughout your documentation. So yeah, so this would be something that would help people contributing, that have a resource to go to see like how to, things like what titles should be used, how to add things to the website, just like basically how to go about documenting things. And it'd also be something that reviewers could use to make sure things stay consistent throughout things as we start adding more documentation, you know, down the road. So something I wanted to propose, I'm not saying it should be like, you know, the final word and law of how things should be added. It's really a guide. It's, you know, more like guidelines. You can break them, be as strict as you decide you want to be with them. But I think it would really help make everything consistent and have like a more cohesive things on the site. So I just wanted to bring it up. If you have anyone have thoughts, opinions about this?
I think having guidelines for how to write docs and how to contribute to the docs, I think that's very useful.
I think it's super useful. We always get stuck on even reviewing, like, we don't have a heuristic for deciding, should we do this way, we recognize that there are multiple ways it can be said, things can be said, but we don't have a heuristic to go look at and say, okay, let's just go this way, because to be consistent. I think consistency, if we at least can prioritize consistency, it would already be awesome. There are guides already out there, so maybe that's something we can consider too, reusing instead of writing yet another guide. So I just wanted to mention that.
Yeah, I definitely think that would be at least a good place to start, to have because many people have created these guides, and then you can have like certain specific rules that are just for Velero, for, you know, anything specific that you need. So that's, yeah, makes sense.
Yeah, we do have a few specifics because of how the docs are formatted through Jekyll. So there are a few specifics, but not that many. So yeah, reuse existing guides, of course. And yeah, I would love this.
Same.
Cool. Should there be an issue for this? I'm new to the community, so I'm not sure what the best way. I can create an issue. Okay.
Yeah, an issue, and I would kind of echo not wanting to create one brand new, just reuse one and maybe tweak it if we see anything that we're like, oh, we absolutely don't want to do that. But yeah, in general, I'm 100% on board with the idea.
Cool. All right. Well, then I can create an issue and then we can sort of start going about creating this thing.
Awesome. Did you want to talk about the release docs as well?
Oh, yeah. So I noticed this something Nolan talked about earlier about the release processes. And I know that there's a release checklist, and I wanted to ask if that was something that is everything in the release documented there, or is there still work to be done to create documentation? And did you need help with that? Is that something I can help with?
So there is a page called release-instructions.md.
Mm-hmm.
And there is an issue. I linked to it in the PR. If you go to the conversation 2472. Yeah, basically this is waiting on Steve to get some of these details out of his head, because I don't know the exact steps for this. The PR I put up specifically addresses a further segment down. It's not the changelog and docs PR, it's a little bit further, the during release section. So my personal goal is to get this document as short as possible, like run a couple scripts and then do the announcements is my hope. But I think right now it's document the patch release process and then see where we're at from there. So I don't think we need a whole lot of docs help here, other than clarifying the patch release process with Steve, and then yeah, going from there.
Okay, cool.
All right. Any questions, comments for Abby? All right. Moving into the last item of today, we got Kevin here, who's a new member of the Velero community. Hi, Kevin.
Hey, Jonas. Hey, Velero community. Thanks for having me on today. Yeah, I guess so some background we're trying to do. We're storage. So we're a distributed decentralized cloud. Our CEO is the former founder and CEO of Docker, and before that, Gluster. And what we do is we create object storage in a way that's similar to, like, say, Airbnb. We encrypt data client side, we break it up and erasure code it into 80 pieces, of which you need any 29 of the 80 pieces to reconstitute the file. Nodes are constantly measured for uptime, and if they go offline, your files are repaired. And so we've had 100% durability. We're featured in TechCrunch, and we're just kind of getting started with some open source community integrations. Recently, we launched an integration and got merged upstream into Arcload, which opened up the door for Restic. And so I was researching kind of like what other open source communities we could tap into, and discovered Velero. And I think having an easy to use Kubernetes backup was something that's really exciting. With Tardigrade, as everything is by default distributed globally, and so you don't have to replicate across US East, US West, Asia, Europe, etc. Your data is globally available and it's hot, and so it's at the price of Glacier with the availability of Amazon S3. With that, I kind of wanted to introduce myself. We're going to probably work on the plugin process and see what we can do. We kind of have two options to integrate with. We have an S3 gateway that uses a modified version of Minio, and then we have Restic integration as well via Arclone. And kind of doing some research, it looks like Restic is probably the better path forward, is there's no kind of, double bandwidth translation, type scenarios there is with the gateway. But I wanted to introduce myself. I think I'll probably hop back on again next week with an update with one of our engineers. Yeah, it's kind of the background for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Kevin. Yeah, more plugins for Velero is always welcome, definitely. Does anyone on the Velero team have any questions, comments for Kevin?
I'm just reading this. I hadn't heard of Storj or tardigrade yet, so this is really cool. So the idea would be to use this as object store, so you could use Restic to send all your stuff to it, not just the Kubernetes metadata.
Yeah, like a backup of your volume and all the other stuff.
Okay, cool.
So Kevin, what do you need from the Velero team and the Velero community to kind of get started with this?
Yeah, I mean, I think any kind of advice on what kind of the best path forward is, we're thinking Restic makes the most sense. But we've looked at the plugin process. We just need to kind of do the work of building and testing the integration, and then submitting kind of the plugin request. Is there anything I should be aware of, like within that process, or anything that would be helpful to know as someone who's not as familiar with Velero?
So for the plugin, there's not really a request you would have to do right now. No, there's no plugins inside of Velero core. They're all separate GitHub repos that you would ultimately control. The Restic integration, we don't really have a way to because Restic is built directly into the Velero core. We don't have a great way of communicating with plugins with Restic right now. So the closest you can get with the Restic at the moment is through our clone. So you probably would have to go through the S3 gateway there. So I think with your plugin, I think at the moment, the thing that you would get closest with is getting a plugin for object store for the Kubernetes metadata, and then uploading snapshots of volume data would probably still be through Restic, but we could keep talking about that. That's the current design. That's not to say it couldn't change, but off the top of my head, I think that's as close as we can get in the current state of things.
Okay. Well, that makes sense. So I'll relay that to our engineering team, and I'd like to kind of hop back on next week. We're going to do a little bit of research, and I'd like to kind of share what our next steps are there next week, if that's possible.
Yeah, definitely. That sounds great. And if you aren't already, make sure that you join in the Velero Slack channel in the Kubernetes Slack, where you can chat with everyone as well.
Awesome. Great. I'll join those today.
Awesome. Thank you so much,
Thank you, Jason. Yeah, thank you. Thank you to the Velero community and everyone. Appreciate it.
All right. Does anyone have any other topics that you want to discuss on today's call? All right, then we are done for today. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. Have a fantastic rest of your week, and we'll see you all next week. Have a good one.